Okay, students, we need to do chapter 4 today. Before we start, we'll just do a real quick summary of what we've read so far. So we started out with Lyddie and her family in the cabin, and her mother went to live with her sister, with her two littlest siblings. And then in chapter 2, Lyddie and Charlie have to leave the cabin because their mother has gotten a job for each of them. Charlie's going to be working at a mill, and Lyddie's going to work at Cutler's Tavern as a maid. Now in chapter 3, we learn a little bit about what it's like to work at Cutler's Tavern. Lyddie has been dropped off there by Luke, and she wasn't dressed very nicely. Remember, she was a farmer's girl, but she went in and she waits in the kitchen. Everyone's really busy getting dinner on the table for the guests, and Lyddie's feeling really kind of shy there. But later on, the mistress of the tavern, Mistress Cutler, came in and had a look at her and decided she needed to have a new dress, so she gave her a dress to wear. And Lyddie was a hard worker. She did her work well and never complained, did everything she was supposed to. She did write letters to Charlie, but her handwriting and her spelling embarrassed her because she knew Charlie had had more schooling than her, so she didn't like writing to him because of that, but she did anyway. And then one day she saw this lady, this person she met, well, that she saw when she first arrived at Cutler's, this girl who's dressed really nicely, and she found out that this girl worked in a factory. This girl was telling Lyddie that if she went to work there, that she'd make a lot of money. She could make up to $2 a week, and that really surprised Lyddie. Lyddie didn't think it was possible to make that much money. But Lyddie looked at how the girl was dressed, and she realized that she was getting her money from somewhere, and she was a farmer's girl. So that's how we ended chapter 3. Now, in chapter 4, we find out a little bit more about Lyddie's job, and we find out that Tryphena, the cook, likes Lyddie and makes friends with her. So what I'd like you to do right now is to pause, and I want you to read chapter 4, pages 27 and just about halfway through 28, where there's the break in the page. So I want you to read 27 and the first couple paragraphs of 28, and then pause. Okay, I accidentally had that on record. I hope you fast forwarded there. Okay, you should be able to answer this question right now. How does Lyddie react? She was shy, happy to see him. Okay. You should also be able to tell us where the setting is and who are the characters so far. Okay, so one of the things you probably noticed on the bottom of page 28 is Lyddie was worried that her father might come back and find the cabin empty and not know where anyone is. But she was kind of in an inner conflict because she also thought that he should have never left. And so she kind of argued with herself, she was afraid he wouldn't know where they were, but on the other hand, well, he should have never left. So then it becomes winter, and there's not so many guests, and then Charlie comes to visit. They have their little conversation, and she's a little bit shy, and after he leaves, she thinks of other things they could have talked about. So Tryphena gave him some snowshoes because not snowshoes. She gave him some food, but he was wearing snowshoes because it might rain or snow, and they don't have snow plows the way we do now. So everything went fine, and then okay, so I want you to pause this again and read to the end of the chapter and then come back, please. Okay, so if you've finished reading chapter 4, there's some talk here about some guests and about runaway slaves. I just want to remind you, students, that this is taking place before the Civil War. The Civil War, for those of you who might not know, was a devastating war in our country in the mid-1800s, and one of the primary causes of it was the disagreement between people on whether or not slavery should be allowed. Slavery was a really important part of the Southern economy, but people, especially in the North, believed that it was wrong, and so after a while our country had a war over it. And so before that, though, there was a law that it was you had to report slaves who ran away, and rewards were given. And so Lyddie's hearing about this in the tavern from the people who come in there, but these are people who are looking for runaway slaves because they can get $100 for returning a runaway slave. And we find out that Lyddie has never seen a black person. She lives in Vermont, and it's a predominantly white area. So the last thing we find out is how Lyddie clarifies maple syrup. Her chores are a little bit different, and she has to help with the milking, the feeding, and watering the stock. The stock are the animals. Okay, so that's it for chapter 4. I'm just going to pause here for a minute because what I want you to do is get out your reader's notes for chapter 5. But before we do that, okay, I want you to just see here on your second page of reader's notes for chapter 4 our vocabulary, and you can find these definitions on Quizlet. So you don't have to do this right now, but I would like you to fill in these definitions. Okay? But right now we're going to go to reader's notes on chapter 5. You can go ahead and read chapter 5 if you want. If you don't have time or don't have access to the internet at home, you don't have to read it, but You can have a copy of the text and take it home and read it if you want. But we're going to just go through these reader's notes for chapter 5. And then if you do read chapter 5, it'll be a little more understandable. So in chapter 5, it does start in the tavern, but Lyddie decides to go home to visit. So we have her on the road going home, and then she's in the cabin. And in the beginning, Tryphena is there, and she tells Lyddie to take a vacation because the mistress has gone away. So Lyddie decides to go to her cabin. And then on the way there, she stops to visit Charlie. Charlie, she doesn't get to see him, he's not home, but she finds out that Mrs. Finney is very, very kind to Charlie, and Charlie thinks of these people as his new family. This makes Lyddie a little bit sad because he's her brother, but she's also glad he's being taken care of. Don't forget, Charlie is only 10 years old. And so I'm happy he's found someone who can be like a mom to him. Okay. Now, the question here, what events makes it possible? Okay, the event that makes it possible is that her mistress has gone to Boston, and Lyddie wants to take the money that she had from selling the calf and hide it there. Now, when she finds out that Charlie's at school, she's disappointed, as I mentioned, because she didn't get to see him, and she's a little bit jealous because of his relationship with his new family. But really, she wants what's the best for him. Okay, now here are some, here are some places for vocabulary, and I'm not sure if Mr. Reynolds has posted chapter 5 yet, but make sure you fill those in. Okay, if you have any questions, do let me know. All right, bye-bye.